Yal ha-nisim, Yal ha-pokad, Yal ha-gvurot, V'ha-tshuvot, Yal ha-milchamot, She'asita la'avoteinu, B'yamim ha'hem b'zman hazeh. Oh God, we thank you. Oh God, we praise you. As you lead us to victory, for every miracle, for every blessing, it's your light that still keeps us strong. La da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da. Of your might, we fought a great fight, and through the darkness you led the way. Where you made our nation strong, you gave us a land to call our own. From those days and even today. Oh God, we thank you. Oh God, we praise you. As you lead us to victory, for every miracle, for every blessing, it's your light that still keeps us strong. Oh, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. It's your light that still keeps us strong. Oh God, we thank you. Oh God, we praise you. As you lead us to victory. For every miracle, for every blessing, God, we praise you. Still keeps us strong.
Shalom, I am Rabbi Shaul Praver. You're watching Rabbi Rock TV. Today we have the great pleasure of being with Brett Goldberg. Brett Goldberg made Aliyah to Israel in 1981. He served there as a tank commander in the Israel Defense Force, and he lived in Yerucham, a development town, for 10 years. Brett now runs a software company in the U.S., and 6 years ago, after the controversy surrounding Operation Defensive Shield, wrote the book A Psalm in Jenin, and it's based on interviews Brett conducted with Israeli soldiers and their families. With no further ado, I welcome Mr. Brett Goldberg to Rabbi Rock. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Now, I remember it well, the events surrounding the Operation Defensive Shield, and I remember the UN Kofi Annan condemning Israel for a massacre before they even went there.
It was very misreported. It was probably one of the most misreported events coming out of Israel. And not only was it misreported in official circles, but nobody really had an idea of what was going on while it was taking place. And that's how I originally was drawn into the story. I'd been doing business with an Israeli website, and there was a fellow who was the ad salesperson for the Israeli website. And I was dealing with him every day. And towards the end of March, I started to not get responses to my emails.
Wow.
And finally, after a few days, I emailed the secretary and said, you know, what's going on? I haven't heard from you guys for a while. And she wrote me back, well, Chagai's in Jenin, and he's fighting there, and he'll get back to you as soon as he can. And that's when I realized that we were so unaware of the sacrifices that, you know, these Israeli businessmen and lawyers and teachers were making on an everyday basis. The soldier Chagai even eventually told me a story where while he was fighting from house to house in Jenin, he was getting a text message from his bank saying how come he hasn't come in to pick up his new credit card. That's how incongruous the whole battle was.
Yeah, yeah. Well, for our viewers, I want to back up a little bit. I guess we're talking about what year? It goes back a few years.
2002.
2002. Buses were blowing up every other day. The universities were being attacked. The students in the cafeteria were being blown up.
Early 2002 was the height of terror attacks in Israel.
It was every day something was going on.
Literally.
And you know, I have family there also. I was telling you before this, you know, on the set, how I have a cousin that had post-traumatic stress syndrome, having been 2 feet away from, you know, watching human beings get blown up. Like I lived in Israel also for about 10 years, and I know something about the ethical code of the IDF, of the Israeli Defense Force, and maybe we could start with that to put this story in context.
Sure. The whole motivation behind writing the story was that basically when an outrageous accusation takes place, you can take two approaches in defending the accusee. One is to say, well, it didn't take place, and the other is to say, well, this is who we're talking about.
Right, right.
And you decide whether or not it could have taken place.
Right, right.
And that was my approach in telling this story, just to show who these men were,
right,
who their families were, who their parents were, who their grandparents were, what their daily lives were.
Yes.
And then to tell the story of what they went through, and then you decide.
Right. Well, I'm going to hold the book up in a moment so they can see the cover. A Psalm in Jenin by Goldberg. And while they're queuing up, we could continue talking about it. I see in the title there you have the tag that a soldier wears. And now, you know, the United States, when they were hunting for terrorists and continue to hunt for terrorists in troubled areas, they don't go house to house. They often blow up the entire building, like certainly when they bombed the building looking for Osama bin Laden or Saddam Hussein. You know, they took out all the people that were there.
Israel doesn't have that luxury, and at the outset of this campaign, a decision was taken to not use long-range artillery,
right,
or aerial support, because the refugee camp of Jenin was such a crowded area. It was 15,000 people crowded into 1 square mile.
Right.
And so the distances between the houses were literally 4 or 5 feet.
Yeah. So you have a lot of civilians living in there. And now this was the main hotbed of these bombers.
Jenin, the Jenin refugee camp and Jenin in general, even going back to the British Mandate, was an area that no army ever wanted to enter.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a very, very dense area where, because of its density, the home team had the advantage.
Yes, yes.
And so it was an area that hadn't been entered for a long time.